Mayor Tuck, City Council members, and citizens. This is my 11th budget as City Manager, and I have found that each year presents its own unique challenges. My first budgets were developed during the Great Recession and the aftermath of the global financial crisis. After that, federal sequestration kept the regional economy stagnant. As a result, we saw several years of declining revenues, followed by several more years of slow growth. When we started the process of developing our fiscal year 2021 budget, we were on track to experience the best revenue growth since before the Great Recession. Several of our economic development projects had come to fruition, including the final phases of the River Point Shopping Center development and the new Element and Hyatt Place hotels, among others. Businesses were expanding in our community. Huntington Ingalls Industry had been awarded a contract for 2 additional aircraft carriers, which, along with additional investments in the defense industry, lifted our regional economy and provided additional positive economic momentum in our community. We are still seeing positive investments from some segments of our economy as I deliver this message. However, several other segments have been shut down or significantly curtailed by the COVID-19 global pandemic. The world changed in mid-March when federal and state governments began serious efforts to control the spread of the virus. To protect everyone's health and safety, orders were issued to close schools and businesses, encourage social distancing, shelter in place, and other measures. Given the suddenness of these actions over these past few weeks, no one has a very good handle on the ultimate impact on the world, national, state, or local economies. Safely lifting these measures is dependent upon a virus that we do not know enough about to predict its ultimate impact. No one knows how long these shutdowns will last or how far the virus will spread, but the timelines for getting the virus in check being discussed by epidemiologists range from a month or 2 to up to a year. The longer the shutdowns need to be in place to control the spread of the virus, the more damaging they will be to our economy. Still, those economic damages pale in comparison to the human costs of pain and suffering and devastating loss of lives. Our hearts go out to those individuals and families who have felt or will feel its direct impact. With so much unknown at this time, we are put in a challenging position regarding how to proceed with our budgets. We know that the economic downturn will change the revenue projections presented just a month and a half ago to City Council on February 26, 2020, but we cannot begin to predict how much and for how long. Whatever assumptions we make now will surely require adjustments. In the face of this unprecedented uncertainty, my budget recommendation includes some of the investments in our community that we discussed at that particular council meeting, but with the clear understanding that we will delay the implementation of those investments until we have a better sense of the budget impacts. In other words, if the shutdowns end sooner and the economy bounces back quickly, we may be able to implement new investments at some point later in the fiscal year. However, we must also be prepared in case the shutdown lasts for several months more and/or causes deep and lasting damage to our economy and our tax base. In that worst case, we may not be able to implement the new investments at all, and we might even be forced to take additional measures to curtail spending. We hope to be able to make these decisions as we get into the fiscal year, when we have better data on the scope of the virus, the success of current containment efforts, and the cost of all those efforts. With that as a backdrop, we have opted to present the fiscal 2021 manager's recommended budget as a pre-COVID-19 budget, with the original revenue assumptions provided. If the virus is successfully contained before the start of the fiscal year, these revenue projections should be on target. Even if it is not, these are the proper recurring annualized revenue estimates that would be expected when life returns to normal. Thus, I am transmitting my fiscal 2021 recommended budget totaling $516,875,291, a 5.88% increase from the fiscal 2020 budget with the aforementioned caveats. Of this amount, the city's portion is $287,757,222, or 55.7% of the total. This includes all city and school capital expenditures, Community Development Authority transfer payments for which the city acts as a collection agent, contributions to outside agencies, etc. The school's portion is $229,118,069, representing 44.3% of the budget. When preliminary revenue projections were presented to Council on February 26, 2020, they showed that we were experiencing strong growth in a variety of areas, including real estate values. This was due to both new development and increases in the value of existing properties. Strong growth was also seen in meals and sales taxes, business license taxes, and lodging taxes. Real estate property values showed an increase for the sixth straight year after several years of decline and grew at a healthy rate of 4%. The good news is the growth in real estate revenues, our single largest revenue source, is a solid, dependable source of revenues and largely insulated from the economic environment in the short term. Those figures are the values of January 1st, 2020, and when we prepare a budget each year, we typically adjust this revenue up from the original projection to account for likely new construction projects. However, we did not make these adjustments this year, which will give us a cushion in our budget. We also kept our second largest revenue source, personal property taxes, flat in the fiscal 21 budget. This revenue typically grows only when people purchase new cars, and we expect purchases to be depressed. We will monitor closely the collection rates on both of these revenues to help guide our actions during the fiscal year. Any increases that might occur will also be in cushions for any negative impacts resulting from lingering COVID-19 results. The biggest revenue impact risk due to the COVID-19 pandemic comes from other areas in which we have been seeing large increases, such as meals, sales, lodging, admissions, and pari-mutuel betting taxes. Right now, the venues that generate these taxes are closed due to the pandemic. Many hotels have vacancies, and restaurants have closed or offered limited takeout or delivery service. We do expect them to reopen, but we don't know when that will be and how quickly they will rebound. We will continue to closely monitor their status and the associated taxes. Since these taxes are collected monthly, we will be able to closely track them and make adjustments as needed. We have already taken steps to mitigate budget impacts in our current fiscal year 2020, such as asking all city departments to defer non-essential purchasing. I plan to continue this direction in the new fiscal year until we have greater clarity on the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. While we have not instituted a hiring freeze, since we have vacancies that have been hard to fill in a tight labor market, we may slow or freeze hiring if the situation warrants. One of my overriding goals has been, and will continue to be, to minimize any impacts on our workforce so that they can provide the services our community needs, particularly in this time of crisis. Once this crisis passes, and if we ultimately have the funding to reinvest in our community, we have recommended projects based upon the guidance provided by City Council, those many volunteers who serve on our boards and commissions, and those residents who take the time to offer their views. Although the in-person I Value chats were eliminated due to the virus, more than 300 residents participated in online polling, and others participated as well by sending emails focusing on an issue at public comment or speaking out on social media. The input we received this year is reflected in both the fiscal 21 recommended budget and the 5-year capital improvement plan. This budget also fully aligns with our Hampton City Schools pre-COVID-19 proposed budget. The areas identified for potential investment in the proposed fiscal 21 budget focus on the key areas that members of the council and the community highlighted, such as competitive compensation for our workforce and additional investments in public safety, education, family resilience, and economic empowerment, placemaking, economic growth, and coastal resiliency. Taken together, those priorities are designed to create a stronger city that addresses our physical challenges such as flooding, blight, and older housing, creates a stronger tax and employment base through company investments, higher wage jobs, and tourism to fund facilities and services, ensures safety and security, provides education that uplifts us all at all ages, strengthens families and neighborhoods, grows economic opportunities and independence, and builds on our 400-year-old heritage and waterfront location as a place filled with art, music, food, recreation, and diversity. Our top budget priority in fiscal 21 will be maintaining existing service levels by keeping our workforce employed and avoiding any adverse impacts on our staff, like furloughs, as much as possible. If the crisis passes quickly and we have the ability to invest in new areas, those priorities will include the following: salary increases for our dedicated and hardworking employees, recurring and one-time increases for our Hampton City School partners, which will facilitate teacher and employee raises as well as pay scale adjustments and support their transformational college and career academy program. Increases to fight crime, including new positions for the police division, as well as additional funds for enhanced public safety street lighting and surveillance systems. Investments in our aging housing stock, investments in flood mitigation and prevention efforts, and investments in our family resilience and economic empowerment initiatives, such as the Summer Youth Employment Program, Youth Connect, Workforce Development, and Poverty Reduction initiatives. While residents expressed a desire for increased funding in a wide variety of areas, and there are many community priorities that could benefit from increased investments, we need to be mindful of the evolving economic environment and make sure we have more clarity on the impact of our revenues before we implement many of these investments. I will now turn to a more specific information summary about each strategic priority. Educated and engaged citizens. Our schools are always one of the city's top priorities. Hampton has maintained our longstanding commitment to our schools through our agreed-upon local funding formula that gives the majority of the residential taxes to Hampton City Schools, and we continue to do so in the fiscal 21 budget. This support has enabled our school system to count on the city, even as the state's contributions have varied from year to year. In 2019, Hampton City Schools achieved 100% accreditation for all of our schools without condition. This is the first time we have received this distinction, proving our commitment to the school's mission of every child, every day, whatever it takes. Additionally, the Virginia Department of Education reported that 92.7% of Hampton's 2019 graduates earned their diploma in 4 years, surpassing the statewide average of 91.5%. And Hampton's 2019 dropout rate was only 1.26%, well below the state's average of 5.59% and the lowest in our 15-locality region. At the secondary level, Hampton City Schools has expanded dual enrollment and industry credential programs. Dual enrollment credit hours increased 642% between the 2015-2016 and 2018-2019 school years. In addition, 74% of the class of 2019 earned 2,604 industry credentials across 68 different examinations. The innovation and accomplishments of our school division, the students, and the leadership drew national attention with the naming of Dr. Jeffrey Smith as one of the top 4 school superintendents in the country. This year's growth in residential taxes will increase recurring school funding by $1,376,164 for fiscal 21. The recommended budget also includes an additional $380,000 in one-time funding above the funding formula to support the new investments needed for equipping the college and career academies. This increase in annual operating budget brings the city's funding for our schools to $76,948,468, over $34 million above the required state funding level. While all localities in Virginia go beyond the state required amounts, Hampton's contribution at this level is a reflection of our strong commitment to our schools. I am also very happy to report that the state has significantly increased education funding, and its contribution to our school system will grow by $16.6 million over the fiscal 20 level. Assuming this funding is maintained in the face of the COVID-19 pandemic, it finally restores the level of state funding to our schools to their pre-recession levels. Part of this increase is also fueled by an increase in enrollment, which is something we have not seen in recent years. This increased enrollment is due to more families choosing to send their children to our great schools. One of the drivers of our school success is the commitment to the innovative For Next Generation Foundation College and Career Academy model. Hampton's College and Career Academy initiative is also focused on the needs of our business community. This approach has enhanced student achievement while meeting the most pressing needs of local businesses, resulting in a highly skilled and ready workforce to fuel growth. I do not believe it is an overstatement to say this effort is proving to be transformational for our schools and community, and it gives me confidence that we will continue to attract businesses which are looking for a quality, ready workforce to our community. Strong schools are not only essential for students who attend them, but they also contribute to the city's economic growth, as businesses and families base their investment decisions, at least in part, on school quality. We believe the increased enrollment at our schools and the strong interest from the business community seeking to locate in Hampton is a result of the progress we have already made, and we certainly expect that trend to continue. Additionally, as with the fiscal 20 budget, this budget boosts our capital contributions to our school division. In addition to the usual $5.3 million set aside for school maintenance and upgrades and the $1 million a year for the one-to-one technology initiative, it provides an additional $2 million in capital funding to allow the schools to accelerate their maintenance and improvement schedule. We plan to continue to increase this capital contribution by $1 million per year until it reaches $11.287 million annually. Increasing school maintenance funding was the top-ranked capital funding priority in our I-value polling this year. In total, the proposed 5-year capital improvement plan includes $64.5 million worth of investments in the physical school buildings and technology. If the impact of COVID-19 is severe, we will work with our partners at the school system to adjust the timing of our capital investment plans as necessary. Safe and clean community. Public safety is the only segment of the budget that has consistently grown at a rate higher than inflation over the past 10 years, and those increases have necessitated cuts in other areas. Hampton has maintained its strong commitment to public safety even during the recession. Public safety continues to be a top priority during this uncertain time. In fiscal 17, the city received a COPS grant from the federal government that partially funded the cost of 5 new officers. The fiscal 21 budget picks up an increased share of those costs as the grant funds have decreased over time. We continue to invest in new personal protective equipment for our public safety personnel, which has become an even more critical need during the pandemic. We also have increased funding for the Hampton Roads Regional Jail to support the additional resources it needs to address Department of Justice concerns and provide a safe environment for inmates and staff. Supporting and enhancing criminal prosecution is important to reducing crime and has been a council priority. Additional funds requested by the Commonwealth Attorney's Office were added during this fiscal year to fund a paralegal and an executive assistant to support the workload of their attorneys, which have significantly increased due to the police body-worn cameras. The fiscal 21 budget reflects this commitment to the Commonwealth Attorney by providing the full year funding for these new staff who have already been hired. If revenues allow, we plan to continue to invest in additional staffing in our police division, which was the top-ranked operating budget priority in our I-value polling this year. The budget plans for 2 civilian positions in records management, which will free up 2 sworn officers to return to the road, and creates 3 additional new sworn officer slots as well. Our pre-COVID-19 plans would also provide additional funding for enhanced public safety streetlights, cameras for the Real-Time Crime Center to help us solve crimes, enhanced blight abatement funding, additional public safety equipment, screening machines for our courts, new public safety radio upgrades, and other investments. Our capital budget also retains funding for the long-planned With Fire Station, as we appear to be close to identifying a site for this location. Family resilience and economic empowerment. Supporting our residents during difficult times and helping them develop the tools they need to be successful is an important service that we provide, and we will continue to work to fund current operations in this area during the crisis. We will also work to identify any new opportunities that the federal and state government may provide to assist people during the pandemic, and we will continue to work with our community partners to leverage all resources to help our residents in need. We are already one step ahead in those efforts with the Work One Workforce Development Center that we began last year. One example is that earlier this year, our Work One Center formed a partnership with Hampton Roads Transit, HRT, to help them train people to fill their vacant bus operator positions. Unfortunately, this program has been suspended to adhere to social distancing guidelines currently in place, but we fully expect to pick it back up after these guidelines are lifted, and we would hope to have several other such partnerships in our community. We are also continuing to fund our local contribution to HRT, which serves as an important lifeline for those in our community who do not have their own means of transportation. While ridership is currently down, if we have an extended period of economic contraction, ridership is likely to increase, as it usually does during economic downturns. If revenues allow, the funding priorities identified for family resilience and economic empowerment include expansion to the Youth Summer Employment Program to provide more youth with positive work experiences, our Work One Workforce Development Initiative to increase the skills of people looking for work, reinstituting the Youth Connect program, which was discontinued several years ago when its grant funding expired, and adding a family services specialist to support our early youth intervention and prevention efforts. The budget also provides for an economic empowerment and resiliency director who will both research additional local initiatives we could undertake and apply for federal, state, and foundation grants to advance our work in this critical priority area. Economic growth. Some economic growth is continuing despite COVID-related closures. Military and defense spending have long been cornerstones of the region's and Hampton's economies, and they have somewhat buffered the region from the worst during previous recessions. This is again a bright spot for our community. Huntington Ingalls Newport News Shipyard, while located in our neighboring locality, nonetheless has employed many Hamptonians for generations. Now, Huntington Ingalls will have a much larger presence in the city, with its renting of 200,000 square feet of space at Knit Center to continue to expand their operations to meet the demands of the United States Navy. This was the largest new lease signed by any company in Hampton Roads last year. These investments, as well as others we are pursuing, lead me to be optimistic about the future of Hampton, even in the face of the great uncertainty around the COVID-19 pandemic. With that said, we still must be cautious. Though this sector is strong, the other two prongs of our regional economy, tourism and the ports, have been dealt significant blows from the closures, and we will not know the full impact of those elements on our economy for months to come. Additionally, the $2.2 trillion relief package recently passed by Congress, while absolutely vital to provide an economic bridge during the current crisis, will increase the federal deficit and ultimately likely accelerate efforts to rein in federal spending in the future, which is what happened after past recessions. Still, the growth in defense-related jobs could lead to more residents choosing to live in Hampton. We are seeing the strength in quality multifamily housing with Monroe Gates in Phoebus, Access Apartments at Peninsula Town Center, Lumen Apartments in Hampton Roads Center, and the With School apartment revitalization. Retail, entertainment, and tourism venues were growing as well, with the Element and Hyatt Place hotels and the renovation of the downtown Hampton Marina Hotel, River Point Center and Kroger, Peninsula Town Center's Sky Zone Trampoline Park, and Rosie's Gaming Emporium and Guy Fieri's new restaurants at the power plant. We expect them all to rebound after the pandemic closures have ended. To improve our development review processes, this budget revamps our building permit fees consistent with the changes presented to Council at the February 12, 2020 work session. These changes align with recommendations from the Development Services Center Customer Oversight Committee and should be revenue neutral. The fee changes impact the plan review, resubmission, temporary certificate of occupancy, and permit fee structure and are designed to meet the following goals: decrease review times, incentivize higher quality submissions, remain competitive within the region, strengthen the partnership for success with the community, create an equitable fee structure, and encourage redevelopment of existing structures. If revenues allow, we have identified targeted investment priorities in our capital budget to support future economic development. These priorities may include continuing our redevelopment efforts on Coliseum Drive to upgrade this important corridor that connects the Peninsula Town Center with the Coliseum and Convention Center area, investing in additional infrastructure in our Hampton Roads Center business parks, continuing to invest in strategic property acquisition and master plan areas to support future redevelopment and development, and the Langley Clear Zone to protect the base from encroachment, making investments in downtown, funding the splash park associated with the Aquatic Center approved last year, and making capital improvements to the Hampton Roads Convention Center. We also look to build upon investments we have made in various housing initiatives to improve our aging housing stock, increase funding to the Phoebus Partnership, conduct a comprehensive review of our development ordinance to increase the efficiency of the approval of new investments in our community, and to improve the readiness of publicly held properties slated for development. Living with the water. Most of our Living with the Water projects are funded with a stormwater fee and are found in the capital budget. The stormwater fee is a stable revenue source that will generally not be impacted by economic downturns, except potentially for collection rates. Therefore, unlike other new investments, we anticipate the projects in our Living with the Water priority that are funded by the stormwater fee to continue on schedule. In fiscal 21, more than $13.7 million is earmarked for Living with the Water projects. These improvements are funded through the stormwater fee as part of the ongoing incremental plan to reduce pollution in the bay. Last year, we proposed a stormwater fee increase to enable us to take a bigger and bolder step to implement our Resilient Hampton projects that meet two important criteria: reducing pollution in the bay and reducing the effects of flooding on Hampton residents. Flooding has emerged as a key issue for our city, and residents' comments and surveys and outreach continue to show it as a high priority for our community. Funding for our increased stormwater maintenance ranked 4th, and our Resilient Hampton program ranked 7th among 41 capital budget projects we polled on during our iValue citizen input sessions this year. Therefore, as we did last year, we propose to raise the stormwater fee by $1 per ERU per month. We will use this fee increase to borrow $12 million in bonds to accelerate our investments in our resilient Hampton and stormwater maintenance efforts. We plan to continue this approach in future years as proposed in our 5-year CIP. I should also note our proactive efforts and leadership in addressing sea level rise and recurrent flooding in our community has been praised by many parties, including the agencies who rate the city's bonds. Standards & Poor's stated in our last ratings report, quote, "We believe the city's efforts to lead regional solutions and resiliency to protect the area from sea level rise and severe weather events indicates a forward-looking and very strong management team," unquote. Placemaking. Last year, we expanded our Reconnect program at the Phoebus Community Center to all community centers in the city. This program provides an easy alternative to earn the $15 annual youth membership by participating in 2 hours per year of enrichment programs or positive activities in our community. This earned membership program is one way we can provide opportunities for more of our youth to enjoy our community centers while achieving additional community engagement and ownership. We plan to continue this program. We are also in the process of adding 2 new neighborhood centers, the construction of which was funded in prior fiscal years. One is in our Old Hampton neighborhood. It will be named for Hidden Figure Mary Winston Jackson, and the other will be in Fox Hill. In fact, since we purchased an existing building for the Fox Hill Neighborhood Center, the first phase would be open already, if not for the current COVID-19 pandemic. Council also agreed to provide additional funding for these 2 centers so they could both be completed in accordance with the designs that have been developed by community stakeholders. This funding is included in the fiscal year 2021 capital budget. Since this is a prior council commitment, we will prioritize this additional funding being released so that these projects can move forward, even in light of the COVID-19 induced economic downturn. Our residents and visitors spend countless hours enjoying our parks and recreational programs and amenities, as well as our libraries, museums, and arts facilities. While the COVID-19 response has led those opportunities to be dramatically scaled back, we expect to resume full operation at all of these facilities that are so important to our community as soon as it is safe to do so. Therefore, as with other areas of city government, our priorities are to first and foremost get our operations back to normal as soon as possible. With that said, we do have areas where we would like to invest if the economy and tax revenues recover quickly enough for us to do so next year. Many of these new areas for investments are included in our capital budget and include investments in new bike lanes, additional funding for the Neighborhood Improvement Program, which funds neighborhood amenities, the neighborhood and structure improvements to support installing concrete swales in underserved neighborhoods, grants to help our neighborhood pools with major renovations, additional sidewalks, amenities like benches and lights at our bus stops to improve the experience of our bus passengers, and enhanced parks, recreation, and leisure service maintenance funding to support additional park amenities for our youth that have been identified during our master planning process, as well as the additional funding to renovate Buckrow Boardwalk. The investments in the Buckrow Boardwalk have also been previously committed, and I would expect it to raise to the top as a priority for continued funding. We are also planning to add artificial turf to Darling Stadium in fiscal year 2023 of the CIP as a means of providing for additional sports tourism and providing much-needed access for high school and local club play on competitive surfaces. Good government. In fiscal 19, maintaining our roads and bridges was another top priority for our residents, and it ranked second only to school maintenance in our I-Value capital polling this year. The amount we spend annually for street resurfacing is determined by the Virginia Department of Transportation formula. We project it will total $35.7 million over the next 5 years. In addition, the 5-year capital plan includes $550,000 in fiscal 21 and a total of $17.5 million to reconstruct Little Back River Road and nearly $5 million to reconstruct sections of Armstead Avenue in future years. Our public works engineers continue to project road needs for the future and work to secure as much state and federal funding as possible. We have been very successful in obtaining VDOT funding for many of our road extensions and improvements. We will also be using $500,000 of our VDOT urban maintenance funding to enhance the maintenance of our right-of-way areas along roads and in medians. This will allow an increase in median mowing frequency and more aggressive litter cleanup effort to keep our city looking its best. To ensure that we maintain our commitment to road resurfacing, we have allocated roughly $500,000 of non-VDOT funding to that capital budget program. While VDOT funding has typically been dependable and we feel confident we will be able to implement these projects, Other areas that fall under good government will be dependent upon the impact of COVID-19, including the hiring of a full-time legislative liaison to replace our existing contractors that support our efforts in the Virginia General Assembly and Washington, D.C., adding a staff training position needed to provide needed skill, supervisory, and leadership training, funding for the replacement of our financial system, which is outdated, and other council strategic initiatives. Here again, our priority is to maintain existing operations, and we will revisit whether we can implement these new initiatives once we have a clearer picture of the impact of COVID. In addition to taking a more conservative approach on our revenue projections than last year and asking departments to defer non-essential purchases, as I noted earlier, we have also increased the contingency budget by over $1 million to provide additional flexibility for our response to COVID-19. Employees. Employee compensation continues to be one of our top priorities. Employee compensation also ranked third in our I-Value operating budget polling, behind only police staffing and the Youth Connect program. Our pre-COVID-19 planning anticipated a 3% salary increase for our deserving employees, along with a merit bonus program. We also had set aside funds to make targeted compression adjustments to misaligned positions. Regrettably, the uncertainty of our revenue picture will require us to delay the enactment of these increases beyond the customary July 1st implementation date. However, as revenues stabilize from the pandemic crisis, we will implement as much of this salary increase as our budget will allow as soon as we realistically can. In the meantime, I plan to accelerate an enhanced citizen satisfaction bonus funded with departmental budget savings to pay out when the fiscal year starts on July 1st, 2020. My hope is that we will be in a position to do more for our deserving workforce later in the fiscal year if the impact of COVID-19 is not too severe. While I am sure this will be a disappointment for our employees, it is the necessary and prudent step we must take to ensure that we protect jobs and do our best to keep all of our great employees whole during this crisis. While other communities have announced furloughs, we are doing all we can to stand by our employees and will continue to do so. Additionally, we did experience a sizable increase in the cost of our employee benefits, largely due to actuarial changes in the state Virginia Retirement System program. Nearly $2 million in that cost alone, which we must cover in the budget. We will also cover the full share of the health insurance increase so that employees do not have any increase in their premiums and their paychecks will remain whole. Taxes and fees. Our goal was always to avoid general tax increases unless absolutely necessary, and I am pleased that the budget does not include a recommendation for a general tax increase in either real estate or personal property. In addition to the changes to building permit fees noted earlier, the recommended budget also includes a proposed rate change that will support our resilient Hampton and stormwater improvements. Addressing recurrent flooding has continued to be a priority for our community. Therefore, I am recommending increasing the stormwater user fee for both commercial and residential customers. The commercial fee would increase from $8.83 per 2,429 square feet, otherwise known as an ERU, of impervious area per month, to $9.83 per ERU per month. The residential fee would increase from $8.83 per month to $9.83 per month, just $12 per year. Even with this rate increase, our stormwater fee remains well below most of other Hampton Roads cities. The budget also recommends a decrease to the public right-of-way use fee of 5 cents from $1.20 per line per month to $1.15 per line per month. This required decrease is made to comply with the Code of Virginia. This rate is determined annually by the Virginia Department of Transportation per State Code 56-468.1. Operational efficiency measures. Over the past several fiscal years, we have reorganized departments to streamline and create efficiencies. More than 125 positions were eliminated during the recession. A survey of staffing from the 7 Hampton Roads cities shows that Hampton has the fewest number of employees per capita, meaning that Hampton is arguably the most efficient government in Hampton Roads. Still, we continue to work to identify opportunities to save money, and this year was no different. Due to the refinancing of the convention center debt in fiscal 2020, we were able to reduce the general fund transfer to the convention center by $300,000. Some of the savings from the refunding was also planned for investments in the capital program. Since that fund relies heavily on the revenue generated by the convention center, along with a portion of the meals and lodging tax, we may not be able to proceed with the improvements to the convention center as noted under the economic growth section. We also reduced $100,000 in grant matching funds and outside agency funding due to agencies indicating no longer needing the funds. As I note each year, Hampton is the leanest, most efficient city in the region, and we continue to look for ways to be even more efficient while taking care of our workforce. However, budget cuts implemented since the Great Recession have made reductions extremely challenging. Additional cuts in the future would likely result in service reductions and eliminations or disinvestment in our infrastructure and economic development and redevelopment efforts. Through their participation in the I-Value budget input process, our citizens have indicated resistance to further service reductions, and that was reinforced last year. Our departments continue to be excellent stewards of public funds, consistently finding innovative ways to stretch funding to meet community needs. Hampton consistently offers comparable levels of service at lower cost when compared to other jurisdictions, which is a true testament to the commitment, hard work, and innovation of our managers and staff. This fact underlines the importance of doing everything we can to maintain existing operations during this most recent challenge presented by COVID-19. Looking ahead, as I mentioned earlier, our local and regional economy was firing on all cylinders prior to the COVID-19 crisis. Right now, no one can say how the situation will evolve over the coming weeks and months. I think everyone's hope is that the sacrifices we are making today, with aggressive social distancing measures, will save lives, slow the spread of the virus enough for us to know how to best combat it, and ultimately lead to lifting the restrictions that have been put in place by June 10, 2020, the timeline outlined by our governor. We also hope the relief and emergency measures put in place by the federal government, state government, and ourselves provide enough of a bridge for our residents and businesses to weather this crisis and come out on the other side safe, healthy, and financially sound. It is an encouraging sign that Congress has acted so swiftly to provide relief during this crisis and has continued to boost spending for the military. With the investments in new infrastructure moving forward, such as the widening of the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel and I-64, the announcement of the designation of Joint Base Langley Eustis as the only candidate and reasonable alternative for the F-22 Formal Training Unit, and the recent significant investment in our city by many businesses, Hampton continues to move forward. I am excited about the companies that continue to explore investments in our city that we hope will come to fruition. If our momentum continues and the crisis is resolved soon, we may be able to do some of the things we thought we could do when we started this budget process, just slightly later than we had expected. However, given the challenges we face today, we must continue to be prudent and measured in our actions as we look ahead. Regardless of what comes, I know our community will remain strong, our workforce committed, and our city ready to overcome any challenge laid before us. Our great and storied history has proven to be our strength, and I see the greatness in the people that make up our community every day. We will get through this challenge together, like we always have, and come through even stronger on the other side of it, like we always do. Closing thoughts. Without a doubt, the recession and slow recovery made for many tough budget years during my time as city manager, but we came through it in a strong position. While COVID-19 offers its own set of unique challenges and uncertainty, we have a great team in place on city council, in city government, and in our community at large, and they will get us through these difficult times. While we may not be where we hoped we would be just a few weeks ago, I know we are strong and will persevere because we are Hampton, a vibrant waterfront community celebrating and embracing 400 years of history and innovation to create an even more dynamic future. I would like to publicly acknowledge and thank the wonderful group of department heads, assistant city managers, and our budget team for meeting the challenges posed by this year's budget. I would also like to thank our residents for their continued participation and input into our budget development process. It is invaluable as we develop the budget. We look forward to continuing to work with each council member in the coming weeks to better understand the budget and its impact on our community and workforce. As always, we stand ready to assist you and the community in your deliberations. For those residents watching our budget message, I would like to remind you that your continued input is welcome and encouraged. While the pandemic may have disrupted our customary means of budget input, this council and I stand by, ready to receive your budget input. You may send written comments to us via council@hampton.gov or by calling 757-727-6315 and have your comments transcribed. Comments received electronically or telephonically will be introduced in our electronic budget meetings and preserved in the public record. Our first budget public hearing will be held on April 22nd at 6:30 p.m. Please submit your comments for this hearing by midnight on April 21st via the aforementioned methods. The second public budget hearing and first vote will be held on Wednesday, May 6th at 6:30 p.m. Again, please submit your comments for that hearing by midnight the prior evening. The final votes to include any adjustments council might make on the budget will be taken on Wednesday, May 16th at 6:30 p.m. Thank you for tuning in and watching our manager's budget message.